Mark Skousen, you are an economist, an author, a teacher at Chapman University. You have written about 25 books. You will correct that later if I'm not correct. You have worked for the CIA, not as a spy, but as an economist. You are an event organizer. You organize the Freedom Fest. You have lived in many countries. Wow, you have an amazing life, and you write several newsletters in addition to all your books and all this and that. But today we're here to talk about your latest edition of the book, The Maxims of Wall Street, a compendium of financial digest, ancient proverbs, and worldly wisdom. Mark, thank you for joining us today.
Alan, it's a real pleasure. I look forward to talking to you about the Maxims of Wall Street or any other questions you might have.
Well, first of all, I am amazed that someone can write 25 books of a dense subject, which is economics. So I'm going to ask you about that, but can we start by your childhood? I mean, when you were 17 years old, did you ever imagine you would have this kind of life? What was in your mind? Like, when I grew up, I'm going to be X.
I grew up in Portland, Oregon, which was a real intellectual atmosphere there, and then have gradually moved east. My parents were Mormon, and so I grew up as a Mormon and went on a mission for the Mormon Church in Latin America. So that was my first exposure to going outside the United States. And I think this is really valuable for all Americans to have a more international, global perspective. One of the things they do in the Mormon Church is they have a patriarch's blessing. This is an elderly man who blesses you and talks to you about your future. And it did say in this blessing that I would be a molder of men's minds. And I think that has influenced me. My own father was an FBI agent and a lawyer, and he passed away, unfortunately, at the age of 46, leaving behind 10 children. I was the third oldest, so my mother had to contend with growing up with 10 children. So I think that encouraged me to be a self-starter, to make it on my own. So I didn't start off with a lot of money, but have really emphasized the importance of being financially independent. So I've always believed in education. I got a bachelor's, master's, and PhD in economics, and then applied economics in the real world by going out and working for the CIA. So I worked for the government, then I worked and have been working for-profit companies and publications, newsletters, book publishers, published a lot of my own books, as well as getting published by major publishers like Simon & Schuster. But I've always, with my PhD, I've always wanted to keep one foot in the academic world and stay with students and get to know what students are thinking, the new generation. So I've taught at Rollins College in Winter Park, Florida. I've taught at Columbia University, Columbia Business School in New York. I've even taught at Sing Sing Penitentiary in New York, which was quite an experience for both my wife and I. And right now I'm out at Chapman University in California, where I'm speaking to you now in Southern California. Beautiful sunny day, 70 degrees, my friend. How does that compare to Montreal?
I'm gonna give you just look at this. This is the snow. It's all white. This is white. So that's how it compares. But let me ask you. So you started traveling very early in life. Why do you think Americans don't travel much? I mean, most Americans don't have a valid passport.
I think it's because the United States is a big country and there's so much to see in the United States that we become more centric to our own country. I mean, we can go to Florida to the beaches. We can go skiing out west. We have the Grand Canyon. We've got beauty. We've got a wide variety of people. I mean, you have to remember the United States is a melting pot. We have people from all over the world who come to us. So why do we need to go to them? But it does create some limitations in terms of music, books that are read. I mean, when I go to the United Kingdom and walk into a bookstore, it's like it's a total different world. So I think it's valuable to learn a foreign language. But look, we have the English language, which is the worldwide language that even you speak it. You know, as much as the French and the Canadians want French to be mandatory, it's just never going to happen worldwide. So we're a little bit lazy in that respect, and I think it does hurt us in not recognizing the valuable contributions we can learn from around the world. So I've been to 77 countries. I make a big point of traveling, whether it's on a cruise ship or flying to all over the world. I've been to every continent. I've been to every state in the Union. And I've lived in countries. I've lived in Latin America. I've lived in London. I lived in the Bahamas for 2 years. It was life in living color. The Bahamas was great because you met people from Canada, from Britain, from Germany, and the Bahamas. It was a mixture of races, 90% Black, so valuable for our kids to learn what discrimination is all about. So there's a lot of value, I think, to living and traveling abroad.
It's probably all this traveling and reading that you do and writing, which is a way to organize your thoughts, the thing that gives you such a broad perspective of life and that helps you along in your finance and economics on how to analyze markets and see trends, because you are not confined to a little corner of the universe, but your spectrum, your lens of view is much wider. So you can, you can just see trends as they are happening and write about it and share with all of us or most of the people who stay in the little corner of the universe.
I'll give you just a simple example. One of the books I'm working on or have been working on for some time is called 1776, The Miracle Year. And of course, David McAuliffe wrote a book on 1776, but it was all about George Washington. It was so narrowly focused on George Washington, but it left out many major events that occurred in 1776 outside the United States. For example, in England, you had the decline and fall of the Roman Empire by Edward Gibbon. You had Adam Smith writing The Wealth of Nations. You had David Hume, the Enlightenment philosopher who passed away that year. You had David Garrick, who was considered the greatest Shakespearean actor, who retired in 1776. So I was looking at all these different things that are happening in Germany. For example, the Illuminati got started on May 1st, 1776, a German socialist movement. So there's lots of examples of things that have happened outside the United States. And by my living outside and traveling out the United States, I've recognized the value of a global approach. And even in my book, The Maxims of Wall Street, which here's a copy of, I don't know if you received it yet, the copy that I sent you, but I have quotes from people all over the world, philosophers from Confucius to Warren Buffett. So we get a wide variety of choices.
And okay, so going back to your past, what is it about economics that attracted you? You had such a wide variety of choices. Do you feel inclined to either understand the economics of the country, of the universe, or was it inclined that you wanted to make more money for yourself?
Well, my interests are eclectic, and I enjoy mathematics, I enjoy politics, I enjoy writing, I enjoy the money, making money. Well, put those all together and you come up with economics, because economics is about writing, it's about politics, public
Psychology.
policy, it's mathematical. In fact, it's advanced mathematics. Is some people think a PhD in economics is really a PhD in mathematics. So all of those things attracted me. Plus, I think economics is a very useful tool as a way of thinking and solving problems. You know, if you take something like the minimum wage, the way I teach it to my students is I do a supply and demand graph for labor markets. We show the impact of the minimum wage law, both pro and con. Then we talk about alternatives. Well, are there some free market alternatives that where we can raise wages without imposing a government mandate saying you have to pay them $15 an hour? And I point out to people that companies that make higher profit margins pay their workers more. So if we can encourage companies to be more profitable through cutting regulations, through cutting taxes, by being more entrepreneur and developing better management skills, profit margins will go up. Well, guess what? If profit margins go up, workers earn more money. And so you don't have to impose a minimum wage, which I think has disastrous effects, can often lead to unemployment of workers. So instead of $15 an hour, you get $0 an hour. So I use those kinds of examples where economics does a great job of solving problems, especially public policy problems. So I'm really bullish on economics. I've actually written a textbook called Economic Logic. It's in its 5th edition. And I've done a history of the great economic thinkers called The Making of Modern Economics. If people go to my website, skousenbooks.com, that's where I mentioned some of these books in addition to the Maxims of Wall Street.
Right, that will be in the show notes. Okay, so so you have this interest in economics and you start working in the economic field. At what moment did you decide to start writing books about economics? Because I saw you the list of books that you have written, most of them are about economics. Can you tell us about the mental process of you debating, oh, I think I'm going to write my first book about X?
Yeah, so I write on economics and finance both. So I have written, the Maxims of Wall Street, which is more of a collection of sayings on Wall Street, but also wrote a book called Investing in One Lesson. So I do write on investing, which is a kissing cousin, if you will, to economics. It's applied economics, which is what I do. But I always feel in economics that if I can, lots of people have written textbooks in economics. So I'm not going to write a textbook unless I think I can improve on economics. The textbook. So, for example, I noticed that no economics textbooks has an income statement, a P&L, profit and loss income statement. It's not in textbooks. So I decided, based on my experience in the real world, instead of starting with supply and demand curves, I'm going to start with the income statement. And it turned out to be a very powerful tool. So that was my contribution to economic logic. In the case of The Making of Modern Economics, if you've ever read a history of the great economic thinkers like The Worldly Philosophers by Robert Heilbronner, that's a very popular textbook. But there's no story. They say, well, here's this economist, he says this, and here's Adam Smith, and here's Karl Marx, and here's Keynes, and here's Milton Friedman. He says this, and he says that. There's no story, there's no plot, there's no hero. And so I said, well, actually we could write. So I wrote this book called The Making of Modern Economics, and I make Adam Smith the hero in his system of natural liberty. And then he comes under attack by the Marxists, by the socialists, by the Keynesians, and he's left for dead. And then he makes a recovery through the through the French laissez-faire school of Say and Bastiat, through the Austrian school of Mises and Hayek, and through the Friedman school, the Chicago School of Economics. And then he triumphs in the end when the Berlin Wall collapses and the Soviet socialist model collapses, and capitalism, even today, despite all the problems, capitalism survives. So I made The Making of Modern Economics an actual story with a hero, with a plot, and there's a good ending even at the end where capitalism wins. So that book has gone through 3 editions and has been very successful. So the idea is I get enthused about writing about something that people missed. They didn't get it quite right. So I feel that by my writing this book and my teaching, I can improve how economics is taught in the world and applied.
Let me ask you a curved question. Do you think capitalism is the best economic system there is, or is it the less bad economic system there is?
Well, it certainly has its defects. There's no question about that. But I actually give a talk called What's Better Than Democratic Socialism, since students and lots of people are attracted today to democratic socialism. I say, so what's better than democratic socialism? Democratic capitalism. In other words, I want a capitalism that adopts a win-win situation for employees, for workers, for suppliers, for capitalists, for executives, for CEOs. I want a win-win. Can we develop a market that what we call a stakeholder philosophy that John Mackey, the CEO of Whole Foods, has developed in his book, Conscious Capitalism? So my emphasis is shareholder, is not a shareholder, but a stakeholder philosophy where workers benefit from employee profit sharing, from stock options, for example, offering stock options. Microsoft is a perfect example of this. Bill Gates decided when he started Microsoft to give all of his employees, including his secretary, stock options. So there are secretaries today that retired millionaires.
I interviewed one of them.
Yeah. So, I mean, that's what I propose. So I call it democratic capitalism. Democratic socialism, unfortunately, doesn't have the proper incentives. It has equality of outcomes, and that is a disaster because there's no incentive for you to work more, to earn more. You tend to sit back and not work hard because you're automatically guaranteed a minimum wage or profits no matter what. So we need a system that benefits both, and that's what I try to teach, democratic capitalism.
Okay, and at what moment in your life you decided to start a newsletter? Because I see that's one of your main activities. You write newsletter, and how did that get started? You just say, "I'm going to send this to a few friends," or you made a big announcement to subscribe to your newsletter?
Well, what happened was this is the key to success in life is you learn from the experts. So after I left the CIA, I became the managing editor of an investment newsletter. I was just the managing editor, so I would learn the ropes on how a newsletter worked. It was called the Inflation Survival Letter in the inflationary 1970s. It was a financial newsletter that included economic analysis. So I learned the ropes on how to do that. And then in 1980, I went out on my own and started my own newsletter called Forecasts and Strategies, F&S, Forecasts and Strategies. And I've been writing it for 40 years now. Now, I am not actually the publisher, I'm the editor, and I get a royalty and I get a monthly fee for what I write. So I don't have to worry about fulfillment. I don't have to worry about promoting the letter. I mean, I give advice and that sort of thing. I basically just write the letter, and I can write the letter from wherever I am. So when I was in the Bahamas or when I was in London, or if I'm traveling to Hong Kong, I can still write my newsletter. I can write it from anywhere because I have my computer with me. So I've been doing it for 40 years. I give specific investment advice, specifically individual stocks, mutual funds, ETFs. I've been investing primarily in the US because emerging markets have done pretty poorly over the years. The US market's been the most fertile market of any market in the world. And if that continues, then I'll stay investing in the US through technology stocks, hard assets. I've added Bitcoin recently, Tesla. You have to adjust. One thing I've learned, one of the maxims of Wall Street is know the signs of the times. You have to adjust your portfolio. And 2020 was a big change. I had to switch from value, high income, dividend paying stocks to growth stocks that weren't paying hardly any dividends, like Tesla and Bitcoin and places like that. And I beat the market this year. Why? Because I adjusted to the new environment.
Wow. But my question was, how do you get started? Do you email a few friends telling them about your newsletter, or do you make some kind of big advertisement campaign informing the whole world about your newsletter?
Well, again, that was the publisher. I'm just the writer. So the publisher had the responsibility of sending out a promotional letter.
Nice.
I did help with some promotions from time to time, but that's the publisher's job to find subscribers. And I had already built up a name, some reputation from my previous work at the Inflation Survival Letter. So when I started Forecasts and Strategies, my publisher had tons of lists and was able to email and saying, hey, you need to subscribe to Mark Skousen's newsletter. He's making some. In 1980 was a significant change in policy. Remember, in the 70s, stocks and bonds did very poorly. You had to switch to gold, silver, Swiss francs, real estate, non-traditional investments. In 1980, when Reagan got elected, I helped write a promotion called The Financial Shock of 1980. You open it up and it said, sell your stocks and bonds, or sell your gold and silver and buy stocks and bonds. It's now returning to traditional investments. And so that caught the attention of a lot of investors. And so I ended up with, I had at one point 75,000 subscribers. I don't have anywhere near that level now because of the internet and so much free information, but I still have a very loyal following of 15,000, 20,000 subscribers to my newsletter and my trading services. But I've had to adjust. I used to do a monthly newsletter. Now I do a hotline. Now I have option trading. There's all kinds of different things you have to, I consider myself a survivor. You have to change, you have to adjust to the marketplace or you're toast.
Well, you are different to many of some of the guests that I had in the podcast that most of them advocate investing in index fund, and they bring out the SPIVA report, which is a report that says that the 80% of investors cannot beat the index. But you just say that you just beat the index, I guess, this year, and I don't know what is your success record in regards to the SPIVA report or to the, let's say, the S&P 500?
Well, if you try to write a newsletter and you just recommend index funds, you're not going to stay in business for very long. People want specifics. They want stories. So I tell, and they want to hear the Tesla story, for example. But I do recommend individual. I mean, sure, I recommend the S&P 500 index fund, SPY is the ETF. And I use that as a measure. Well, are we beating that or are we doing better? But you can't expect investors have a natural love of beating the market. Nobody's going to go to a cocktail party and say, yeah, I'm in the S&P 500 and I made money. No, but if you said, hey, a month ago, which I did, a month ago, I bought Bitcoin. And so I bought it at a fairly high price. It's doubled in a month. Now that's worth a cocktail party talking point. And people want that. You can offer them saying, listen, you can't beat the market. Don't even try. what's the point in subscribing to an investment newsletter if somebody tells you that?
Right. Okay. And I'm just covering different corners of your life. I had to ask you about Freedom Fest. I mean, this is an event that is quite popular. Thousands of people go to that event. Unfortunately, this year, the government prevented you from having it. It was too successful for them to handle. So can you tell us just what is it about, what goes on in those kind of dangerous encounters?
Yeah. Well, Freedom Fest is held every year in Las Vegas. At least it has been until this next year when we were shut down. But we attract a couple thousand people. It's an intellectual feast in the entertainment capital of the world. We do something very unique in Las Vegas. And that is we have a Renaissance gathering. So we're talking philosophy, history, science and technology, geopolitics. I mean, we've had people from Donald Trump to Paul Krugman. So we get people from both sides of the political spectrum because we're there to learn. We're there to have civil debates. We don't shout at each other. We don't name call. We try to find out what are the best solutions to our problems. We have music, we have dance, we have poetry. It's really a fun event. So if people go to freedomfest.com, they can see what we're doing. Now, because of the lockdown in Las Vegas, we just felt we couldn't take another chance. So we're going to the freest state in the Union, South Dakota, and Mount Rushmore at Rapid City, and people are excited. I am shocked how many people have not been to Mount Rushmore and would like to see it in person. So we have John Mackey, the CEO of Whole Foods. We have Steve Forbes as our co-ambassadors. We've had William Shatner speak. We've had George Foreman. We've had Kevin O'Leary, one of your Canadian Shark Tank people. We've had some great big name speakers, and we will continue to do so. But yeah, Freedom Fest is really a lot of fun. It's something we all look forward to every year. I'm hoping, Alan, you can come and join us. We actually do have quite a few Canadians who come down for the big fest. And this time they'll probably just drive there if they're in Alberta or someplace like that, Vancouver. It's not a bad drive. And yeah, it's really a fun experience and oh, by the way, we have a film festival called the Anthem Film Festival. And we're expecting, there's a new movie out called Reagan with Dennis Quaid playing Reagan. And they're planning to come to Freedom Fest and Dennis Quaid as the actor to talk about that film, as well as all the other films that we do. And we do a financial conference, a 3-day investment conference.
Wow.
We've had some pretty big names attending that as well.
I'm always curious about the origin. How do you get that started? Same thing, you just send an email to your friends and subscribers, or you did an advertisement bliss, or what was the?
Well, we
the
started in 2007, so we've been doing it for 14 years.
Wow.
And again, I've been, I know everybody, and so. I've contacted my people, and we put full page ads in National Review and Reason Magazine and the Wall Street Journal, wherever we can, to attract a large group and a lot of emails. We develop an email list from, I encourage my subscribers to come because it's an investment conference as well. And if you're a concerned citizen of what's happening in this country and around the world, you'll want to be there. The whole idea is for all of us to come together once a year. We all live busy lives, but maybe once a year we can set aside a couple of days and get together in Vegas, or in this case, South Dakota, to learn from each other, to network, to socialize, and celebrate liberty, or what's left of it.
Okay, so my last question is in regards to the latest edition of the Maxim of Wall Street. First of all, when did you start it, and how many editions are there, and what's different about this latest edition?
So in the early 1980s, as I was writing my newsletter, I constantly heard little sayings that people, Wall Street brokers would use, like sell in May and go away and don't come back till Labor Day, or nothing makes the spirit fly higher than finding a bargain when you're the buyer, and nothing makes the spirit sink deeper than finding it later a whole lot cheaper. And what's the definition of obscene profits? It's something you always hear about but never experience yourself. And I'm saying a lot of these things because one thing I learned is that Wall Streeters are really cynical people. They think they don't leave much money on the table. Insiders take advantage and so on. So what I decided, I started collecting these sayings. And in 2011, I said, you know, I've got several hundred of these. I'm going to put them together in a very nice book. So here's the book, and it's always been the same cover each time. You can see it's green leather or leather-like. Leather itself would have caused the book to be, I'd have to pay 30, you have to pay $30 or $40 if I did real leather. But it's
and the
gold.
vegans wouldn't buy it.
I have a ribbon in the middle. So this is printed in a very classic way. And I first went to Wiley and Sons, who had published some of my books. And I said, so Wiley, would you like to publish this book? And he said, oh, I'm sorry, Professor Skousen, but quote books and gift books do not sell. So we're going to pass on it. Well, I've now gone through 8 editions in the last 10 years. I've published 35,000 copies of this book, and I basically just sold it online. Yes, it's available on Amazon. You're going to pay a higher price for it. This is the 10th anniversary edition. It's very special. So each one is numbered, and I actually put in if you have a favorite number, and I believe you had a favorite number like 55 or something like that, a Fibonacci number. I'm not sure which one it was, but and then I sign every copy and we mail it out to everybody. And if they use my, in order to get my signature numbered, you need to go to skousenbooks.com. Maybe you can put that up on the screen for them so they know the spelling of my last name, but it's Skousen, skousenbooks.com. They normally retails for $24.95. You pay only $20 for the first copy, and then all additional copies are $10 each because it's a great gift item. So we get most of our orders are for 2, 3, 4 copies, 9 copies, and if you buy a whole box, which is 32 copies, you pay $300, a little less than $10 each. And again, I autograph them, number them, and send them out on media mail. Now for Canadians, they have to pay a little bit more if there's any of your Canadian people, because you can only send it airmail to Canada. But if they go to skousenbooks.com, I give all the details on how to order the book.
You just mentioned that there is the discrepancy between the Amazon price and the price on the website. How does that work?
Yeah, Amazon charges full price for my book. It's $24.95 US. And so I sell it for $20, and I even pay for the postage. So wow. I'm like Amazon, like in that respect, I pay for the postage. So it's not a big money maker for me, but people investors love this. Clients love it. If you have money managers or brokers who watch your show, they make a great gift item. And I've sold over 1,000 copies just in the last month, primarily as Christmas gifts for people who want to hand them out and give them out for the holidays to their clients and to friends and that sort of thing. Okay. And it's not just a quote. Let me just say something about the book that's really important. It's not just a bunch of quotes all the way through the book. I divide it into various categories like value versus growth, dividends versus non-dividends, gold, government policy, bargain hunting, brokers, gurus, penny stocks and gold bugs, shorting the market, income investing. So they're by categories. So you're not just jumping all
Right.
around. If you have a certain interest, you can pull it out and read it, you know, and saving and investing and that sort of thing. It really is. It's a fun read. I've been endorsed by Warren Buffett himself. It's his favorite quote book, and he says I plan to steal some of their lines. So it was really nice to get a endorsement from Warren Buffett, but also Jack Bogle of the Vanguard funds, Dennis Gartman, the Githlers at the Money Show, Alex Green. Barron's did a very nice review of it. So I've gotten some really nice reviews of the book, and we just went to press with the new 10th anniversary edition. So we do lots of copies, and look forward, if anybody wants to order them, they can do so online at skousenbooks.com.
Okay, so before we close, can you share with us maybe 3 quotes that are characteristics of this year 2020?
Yeah, okay. Well, for example, Warren Buffett has a wonderful quote. And Warren Buffett says the stock market can go from green to red without stopping in yellow. And I think that is really a great quote. I also have a quote from Sir Harry Schultz, who said, that never underestimate the size of a panic or the power of politicians. And think about that. See, this is why these quotes are so useful. It's just a one-liner, and yet this panic, this pandemic that we've seen is built into much larger than it should have been, in my opinion. And we had these lockdowns and the power of politicians. Did we ever think that the government had this kind of power to shut down restaurants just like that and close the economies and could care less about hurting small business and causing people to commit suicide and bankruptcies and stuff? I mean, it's a travesty is what happened in 2020. And I guess the last quote would be really good is economy is a great source of revenue, and no revenue is sufficient without economy. And these are quotes from Seneca and Ben Franklin. Wow. And people were caught short, weren't they, when they end up quickly losing their jobs. And then they said, well, what resources do we have to survive on? And a lot of people were living paycheck to paycheck, and they were hurt substantially. And as a result, the government has just gone wild in terms of spending and printing of money. And we live in a new normal that could have disastrous consequences. That's why I tell people to keep subscribing to my newsletter, because the signs of the times are constantly changing. We need to be alert to change, and you have to change your portfolio. A lot of people lost money this year, but if they switched and moved to the areas that were more profitable, like online technology, they're up this year.
Well, you know, one of the things, the biggest surprises of this year is that it ended up being a positive year. And that surprised the hell out of me. I was panicking when I saw my portfolio going down 40%, and then it recuperated, and now I'm ending of the year positive around 10%. That was just like,
yeah, no,
crazy.
It's I was just as surprised. I mean, every January I put out a prediction issue, and in January of 2020 I did make a prediction that a black swan event could derail the longest bull market in history. And that was a very good prediction on my behalf. But even I was surprised by how quickly the market recovered. And again, I adjusted my portfolio so that we would take advantage of that, because some of my investments are still down 25%, like some of the high dividend paying stocks have really struggled. Especially I had one Main Street Capital that was invested in small business, and that's been really hurt. Small business has really not recovered, you know, like the restaurant businesses and stuff like that. But meanwhile, if you switch to the technologies, you could do really well. One of the other surprises after the election is that gold in particular has done very poorly. Well, Bitcoin has done really well. So I switched from gold to Bitcoin. You've got to make these kind of changes.
Right.
And if you don't adjust your portfolio, if you just say, I'm going to just stay with my own portfolio, which I've done in the past, you're going to be waking up to a rude awakening, I fear. So it's there's a lot of wisdom in the maxims of Wall Street. I hope your listeners can, I have people put it on their bedside at night to read a little bit of wisdom before they go to sleep.
I will put it in my bathroom as well. A little bit of wisdom.
Good bathroom reading, yeah.
Okay, so Mark, the last question. Please tell tell us about one more time the website and the social media where people can follow you.
Yeah, I'm on Facebook and Twitter and that sort of thing. But in terms of my own newsletter and following my advice, they can go to markskousen.com. And I don't know if my name is up there.
It is there, but I will put all that in the show notes.
Yeah, markskousen.com is all about my newsletter. And then for the books is skousenbooks.com. That's where people go to order copies of the book. And it's been fun. I mean, like I was telling you, I like to write things that nobody else is doing. And nobody has compiled all the sayings on Wall Street. And between the first edition in 2011 to the current edition, I've added 200 quotes altogether, including the latest Warren Buffett one about going from green to red without stopping at yellow was a new addition. Oh, the other one I like that I just added recently is the stock market takes the stairs up and the elevator down. And so, he's kind of stepping up like that, but then it just collapses. And another great quote, which I just added, was the bull takes the stairs up and the bear jumps out the window.
and who was the one who said that the market can stay illogical longer than you can stay solvent or something of that nature?
Yeah, no, that was John Maynard Keynes, and I do have that quote in the Maxims about the market can stay irrational longer than your portfolio can stay rational. So that is a classic quote and very true. Keynes was a brilliant investor. And so I have quite a few quotes from him. Warren Buffett is quoted more than anyone else, but I have Jesse Livermore, I have stories of Joe Kennedy, J.P. Morgan. There's just, I would say I probably have 200 famous people that have said things that are really profound and pithy.
Okay. Well, thank you so much, Mark. This has been an amazing conversation.
Thank you, Alan. Take care.